It is September 26th, 2024, and I'm checking in on the gas meter. All right, let's see. What is there today? Oh, there's a new camera. Oh, Leica has a new camera out. Okay. Gas is up. Oh, it's a digital camera, not a film camera. Okay. The Leica Q3 43. A 43 millimeter lens. Okay, immediately I can imagine being in the product meeting and, right, it's going something like this. Hey, let's make a Q camera with a different lens. Well, I know. Let's do a 35. No, let's do a 50. No, come on, let's do a 35. We have so many megapixels, you can crop into 50. You can crop into 90. Yeah, but 50, right? I mean, people shoot rangefinders with 50. This is Leica. 50. No, 35, 50, 35, 50. Hey, I know. True normal. 43. Yeah, 43. Q3, 43. It's got a ring to it. All right, guys, let's do it. Now, the late Irwin Putz, right? He obsessively studied and wrote about Leica lenses for decades. And towards the end of his life, you can see him struggling with the new direction of Leica, where sort of the image product isn't just about the best lenses anymore. It's a system, a lens software system. And, right, he struggled with that, right? If you take that Leica Q lens and you take it off the camera and you put it on, right, this is a little bit of fiction here, but you just put it on a normal M, right, that lens has a lot of flaws, right? It's this combination of the software that's doing a lot of corrections, right? It's now a whole new set of variables for the designer to work with. And I think you could defend the 28 choice, right, and sort of the imperfections in the lens with like, yeah, but now you've get weather sealing and you get autofocus and you get, right, beautiful out of focus areas for a 28 millimeter lens. And yeah, the software is kind of picking up on some other weaknesses, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. The image quality is there. Right, and you sort of need that with a wider lens, where it's a little harder to make a really good design. Okay, but now they're going to go with a 43, and it's an Apo lens, and right, true normal on a 35 millimeter sensor. You would think that there's probably not a lot of imperfection really in this lens. And I think my first surprise on this camera is that this lens is f2, not a 1.7, which I don't really care about, but it is even bigger than the 28 millimeter lens. And for that reason, I'm going to lower the gas level. Right, compare the size of that lens to the 50 millimeter Apo Summicron on a M11, and I think the right form factor is going to be a win for the Summicron, the 50. Right, and I think there's going to be two quick responses to that. Is right, one is, yeah, but for the price of the 50, you can get the 43 and a camera. Right, and counter to that is, but yeah, the 50 Summicron is, Apo has been out for a little bit. You can get a really nice used copy at a price point that's going to stay steady or maybe even go up in time. And if you buy this brand new Q3 43 in 2 years, your investment has lost value. And the gas lever goes down. But now someone's going to say, but with the Q, you get autofocus, right? So you pair an F2 and autofocus, something that can be a little more portrait friendly, right? And you can crop into, you have lots of megapixels to do some cropping in, so you can kind of make this work like a portrait lens with autofocus. I personally don't love using autofocus on digital cameras because you're often like toggling or pushing buttons or adjusting your focus point because you don't want to always be focusing in the dead center. Feels a little bit like kind of using a, I don't know, remote control or something. Right, I much prefer just manual focus, rangefinder style focusing. I can maybe imagine a situation where it's cool to have autofocus or saves you from just a lot of redundant work. Maybe if I'm a wedding photographer and I'm doing that a lot, right? I would enjoy the autofocus. So maybe I'll raise the level up a little bit. Right, but back to just like this being a good investment, right? If my first kind of gut instinct is to, right, wait patiently, have more people use this, and at some point, right, the Q4 43 comes out, and now there's some, right, we know about Leica users. There's always a subset that just buys this and doesn't really use it, and then all of a sudden there's really nice copies on the used market, and right, I can find, right, I don't want to call it half price, but something considerably cheaper, right, in a few 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and maybe that's a long time to wait for some people, but that's what I would do. Right, but now there's this like, is this a one-off? Right, is the Q3 43, this is the only time they're going to do it, or will there be a Q4 43 and a Q5 43? And I would say, right, I think they've made a lot of R&D investments in this lens, and I would expect to see it on multiple bodies, right? They're going to run this lens for a long time until it's not, up to the standards. So it could be around for a very long time on a Q-like product line. Unless this product is a total flop, which I don't think it will be, because I think the lens and the combination of the lens and the software are going to make incredible images at f2. The autofocus is going to be right on, and there's going to be people who just sort of love that super sharp, right, portrait-like image that's going to come out of this and be readily available in lots and lots of reviews. So I suspect it to be a successful product from Leica's perspective. Am I ready to move the gas lever? Yeah, maybe a little bit towards the warm side. Now, if you had asked me a month ago and said, what focal length do you hope they choose? I actually wish that they had gone to 25. Doesn't have a ring to it, but the Q3 25, right? Actually, right, my favorite two lenses are a 24 and a 25, and then after that a 35. Right, I really like that, carrying a duo of cameras, right? A 20, let's call it a 25 and a 35. So for me, right, especially if I have gobs of megapixels, right? I like the idea of the 28 and that you can crop into it, right? Why have I never bought a Q? Well, one, I just generally prefer film to digital. Um, Two is I really like that optical rangefinder view where you're looking through glass and you see everything sort of as is in the world, right? Everything is equally in focus and you can see around the edges of the image. I know the Q3 lets you have a digital EVF where you can overlay, right, a frame line and sort of pretend to be an optical finder, but right, you're still looking through the lens, so right, you don't really get the sort of infinite depth of field of just looking with your eyeball. Um, right, you're limited to the lens focus and focal planes. Right, and with the 43, this is going to even be more true, where you're really, when you're looking at the EVF, there's going to be the possibility that even more things are out of focus. Which, of course, is the obvious benefit of, like, you're looking at what your image is going to be, and that can have a lot of value, especially if you, right, aren't well versed in your ability to imagine what an image is going to be. But it's quite different than using an optical finder. And right now, I've got to think about, like, wouldn't it be great if you could, like, yes, these are autofocus sort of weather sealed systems, but what if you could take off the 53 lens and put on the 28, right? It's like the Leica Q4X, right, where it's now you have interchangeable lens systems on this thing, and it now starts to sound like science fiction, right? But it's like, and then let's add the ability to have an EVF or an optical finder, right? Let's have everything. And it's like, wait. The Fuji X Pro 1 sort of already did all that a long time ago. But, right, the thing I could never quite love with the Fujis was that the manual focus was focused by wire, which was really great for the autofocus system, but it was sort of made manual focusing, right, not a pleasure, right? So Fuji didn't quite figure it out. And we got to give Leica some credit here that they've, right, made a lens that is a joy to use with a manual focus tab lever, and it has autofocus, right? So, but something was also sacrificed, right? We're still limited to one lens and no optical finder option. And so then I'm back for a second of like, well, why not just buy like a used digital M, right? One that we know works and doesn't have defects that they haven't fixed yet, and pair it with a Summicron or a Summilux in the 35 to 50 range, and maybe even, right, hit the price point that you're going for, maybe a little cheaper, the same, a little more than this new camera. But then you just think about, like, I know there's going to be people who are going to be giddy about, like, wow, at f2 this thing is amazing, autofocus, can crop in, it's like a 150 millimeter lens, right? I know that is going to be a market space, but it sure doesn't resonate with me. And when it comes to like bigger lenses, I don't mind a bigger lens if it's a wide angle lens, because, right, I mostly do candid type work, so if I'm have a big lens, I don't want it pointed right at somebody. This sends a strong message to people that you're photographing them, right? And I like to be more subtle than that. So if it's a big lens, be wide so that I can not be pointing right at the person. But if I have to point at the person because it's a longer, like it's a 50 or something, or it's 75, right? I want that lens to be small and not draw attention. So the fact that this is a bigger lens and mostly one I'm going to have to point to people, again, it's like, that's fine if it's a wedding or if it's portraits or if it's in a situation where people know I'm taking pictures of them, but not quite like what I want for candid work. So again, the lever comes down. And then I'll just get to the obvious for me, that I'm still shooting 75% or more black and white, and I prefer film for shooting black and white. This is not a film camera, so it is dead on the gas meter for me. But I know there's going to be some people out there that are going to love this thing. And that's good, because they're going to buy it and they're going to have it for a few years, and then they're going to give it to Tim Lay on Leica Discord, and he's going to put it up for sale at, like, I'm going to think optimistically here, half price, right? And maybe by that time I'll say, might try it out. All right, take care.